This episode is brought to you by Paintsville Tourism. Visit paintsvilletourism.com. Paintsville is located in the heart of the Country Music Highway on US 23 in eastern Kentucky. Come see why Paintsville is eastern Kentucky's city of note. Visit paintsvilletourism.com. This episode is brought to you by the Highway Artist Management Agency. We take pride in helping artists achieve their full potential. Visit us at highwaymgt.com. That's highwaymgt.com. If you're in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, try Pops Chevrolet. Pops Chevrolet will give you the best price guaranteed. Visit popschevy.com. P-O-P-S Chevy.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shed podcast.
One of my favorite fun stories like that with Harold, I'd been working for Harold about 6 months before he went to Mercury Records, and Capitol had signed this act, this duo, this guy and girl, that they had signed, and they wanted Harold to produce records on them, and Harold had come in and played some demos of them early that he had played for me, so I started pitching him songs, and I started befriending him because, you know, as publishers, guys, that was part of our job. We got to befriend the artist so we could go play him songs and stuff, and boy, I was convinced I was going to get a bunch of songs on it. I was in, you know, it was all happening right there, and Harold was doing it. So I got to know him well, and it was an interesting situation because it was a guy and girl, and they were together. I'm not sure if they were married, Harold. Do you know? I don't know if they were or not, but they were together.
I doubt it.
But anyway, he was a little bit older than her. He was a little bit.
I don't think they were. Wink, wink.
Yeah, but he was a little bit older than her, and he had like a Svengali effect over her. You know, I always like to say, and it was kind of odd. But I was convinced they were going to cut all these songs for me. And they had a bunch of songs on hold, and the other interesting part of the story is they had a pet wolf. Not a dog that looked like a wolf. It was a wolf. Yeah. And it didn't like me. I don't know who else it didn't like, but I'm sure it didn't like me. And so when you came down into the control room at the museum, you remember when that little holding area where the coffee pot was and stuff, and they would tie that dog up or that wolf up in there, and it just growl and try to jump at you, be tied up, and I'd have to squeeze around to get them thrown. So anyway, the day they recorded, they did a 10 and a 2 that day. They were recording. And so, at the end of the session, it was the end of the day for me. I bopped down. I was going to win and see if I got my songs cut. I was pretty excited. I'm thinking, I'm getting these songs cut. This is going to be great. Harold's going to make these records, and it's going to be great. And so I go down there, and I walk in, and Harold's behind the console with, bless his soul, Jim Cotton, rest his soul. Wow. Nicest guy in the world who engineered all those records.
One of the greatest engineers
just
ever.
The nicest guy, never, just always just a pleasure.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and Cotton looks over at me and smiles, and I'm smiling because I'm getting some songs cut, pal. I'm in, and I walk in, I've gotten past the wolf. I'm in there. Harold's sitting there, and just as I walk in, sit down, waiting to hear, because I'm figuring I'm going to find out they've cut my songs, and I'm going to go home and celebrate, So I go in and sit down in the control room, and I'm being quiet because they're working and respectful, and all of a sudden the tape stops, and the girl is in the control room, and the guy's out singing, and I'm not going to call their names anyway, and all of a sudden Harold pushes the talk back and says to the guy, "Come on in." "How y'all doing?" I'm talking excited. "How you doing?" So he walks in, he sits down, the mood's good to me anyway. I didn't read the room very well, obviously, because I'm going to find out in a minute that Harold's not too happy. So they sit down, I'm smiling, and I'm looking at Cotton. "How you doing, man?" And talking to the girl, and everything's good. And he comes in and sits down, and Harold looks over at him. He says, "We got a problem." And I'm thinking, uh-oh, this doesn't sound good. And he said, "Yeah, what's that, Harold?" And he said, "You can't sing." And I stopped. I'm just sitting there, and he says, "Pardon me?" He says, "You can't sing." And all of a sudden he goes, "Well, that's your opinion." I said, "Harold, no. You can't sing." And also I look at Cotton, and Cotton's going, yeah. So I figured I better do the same thing. I put my head down, and all of a sudden they start going back and forth. Well, I can't leave. What am I going to do? Get up and move? I mean, it's like mud in this room everywhere.
You got the wolf.
And so they start arguing back and forth. So Harold says, "Well, that's not you on that demo. I'll let you tell the rest of the story in a second." He goes, "Yeah, it is." And Harold says, "No, it's not. It's not you." And he goes, "I want to know who it is." And the guy said, "Go on." I forget what he said.
Oh, he said, "No, that's not me." And he said,
now, right before you finish,
I said, well, who is it? And he says, "That's a friend of my brother's."
What's his name?
Know somebody that knows somebody. And I said, "Well, get him in here." He said, I can't. And I said, "Why not?" He said, "He's in Ventura." So He was a California guy that almost made the cut. Had he been there, he would have been in.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole nother book that could be written about people that think they're playing or singing on a record.
Yep.
Yeah. Because they actually, when it was tracked, played or sang, and that aren't anywhere.
Yep.
Not going to name any names, but there was a guitar player that thought he was really good. Because the guy that replaced his track was really good.
Well, that was part of my thing when I came to Nashville. And people, even now, they say, "Do you play and sing?" And I said, "Well, I thought I did till I moved to."
Exactly.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
Exactly.
So, and another great story about records. We had signed a guy. First of all, this is really an interesting story because it's about Billy Ray Cyrus. And Billy Ray is an interesting story, still an interesting story. Yeah. And still singing. But I bumped into a friend of mine who was a big star at the time. He was on the Opry and played all. His name was Dale Reeves. And had some big records that Scotty Turner made. Yep. And Scotty is actually the guy that brought me to Nashville.
That's right.
I loved Scotty. When he was from Nova Scotia and went to school in Dubuque, Iowa, and was a track star. And a lot of people don't know that about Scotty, but he was quite a man. And so he enticed me to move to Nashville, and I did. And he had done all of these Dale Reeves records, and a guy named Bill Phillips and Bobby Lewis. The guy did tie a ribbon around the old oak tree. He had done a lot of things. Plus, he had played in the Baja Marimba Band and had played guitar in Tommy Sands' band.
Wow. What a background.
So I'd moved to Nashville and on the strength of Scotty, and I lost my train of thought there.
Billy Ray.
Oh, Billy Ray. So Dale Reeves said, I said, where have you been? He said, well, I was just up in Charleston, West Virginia, and a young boy opened a show for me, and I should have opened for him because I couldn't follow him. I mean, he had him standing and jumping across the tables and doing all this stuff. And when he left, the crowd left.
Oh, God.
So he told me who it was. And so then about 2 weeks later, he was going to be opening for Reba McEntire in Louisville. So at the time, I had a guy working in the A&R department, Buddy Cannon. Mm-hmm. And so I said, Buddy, go to Louisville and check this guy out and see if you think we should see him. So he did, and he came back and he said, yeah, I think you ought to go see him. And so I did. And his father was a big guy in the union, coal miners union. And so he sent their plane, and Paul Lux and I flew to Charleston to see Billy Ray. Paul Lux was the GM at Mercury at the time. And so we got to the place, and I'm telling you, I've seen this one time in my life when Elvis played the Fox Theater in 1957, where women literally threw their clothes on stage. It was the first time and only time I'd ever seen it up until the first night we saw Billy Ray, and it was like Elvis.
Wow.
And it was just a wild scene, man. And so Paul and I came back, and we were, in awe of what had happened. I said, Paul, what do you think? And he says, I don't know. Says, if we were set up or it was real or what. And so I had told him, I said, well, I don't know either. But if it's real, we've found the next Elvis, This is a guy. And I told Russ, I said, it's Elvis, But so we put the promotion team and marketing together and rented the bus and went back. Different venue, but it was the same scene all over again. and I just, I still couldn't really believe it because Billy Ray, he was not the greatest singer in the world, but man, the guy had been touched by the master.
Amen.
And it was like that. And I went back in total disguise at a different venue where he would not have known me had he seen me, And I said, but it was the same thing. So after the third time, I came back and then called him and told him to come in, that we're going to try and structure a little deal for you. And so he did. And believe it or not, the night before our meeting, he slept in his car in the parking lot.
A 1982 white Chevy Beretta. I remember that car well.
Chevy Beretta.
Wow. Go ahead, Harold. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's it. That's basically the story. So,
oh my God.
So we signed Billy Ray, and then Russ, being the great publisher that he is, came up with the Achy Breaky Heart song. And when Billy Ray heard it, he said, that's my song, He knew.
Yep.
He knew also that because it was his.
Yep.
No one could have done that song like he did. And he recorded, man.
Well, all hell broke loose. I got to tell us from my perspective real quick, because we've talked about how understated Harold is. How I'm excited. We're all excited.
Yeah.
Harold getting excited is different than us getting excited. So
that was as excited as I've ever seen.
We would Harold and I would have a Monday morning meeting on a fairly regular basis. When he was at Mercury, he'd come over and kind of catch up on Mondays or Tuesdays. And so he walked in one morning. It's the same thing. We were having our coffee, and Harold put his briefcase down for a second. And we got a cup of coffee and sat down. And he said, "Man," I think I found Elvis. Now, back in those days, that was a common thing. People would say, hey, because everybody was joking about Elvis still being alive. Hey, Elvis has been sighted here. And I started laughing. He said, no, I'm serious. I think I found Elvis. And I said, what? He said, man, we saw this guy this weekend. This is the story he just told. It's like he told it. And he said,
he was on Mercury.
They found him. Yeah, there you go. But he said, I might have been set up, though. I'm not sure. I'm going to go back and see him. And I said, okay. So we carried on the rest of the day. I didn't think much more about it. Well, a few weeks later, we come in, we get our coffee and sit down. And without any setup, Harold goes, it's Elvis. I went, what? He said, that guy I told you about, it's Elvis. And I said, oh, okay.
It's him.
Further to that story, what's funny about this is I said it before, how I said people would call and say, he's lost his mind. You talk about lost your mind calls. So anyway, there was another guy in town that I won't mention his name who was doing A&R and making records, and that we all know well. And we were down in the control room one day. I was down in the control room with Joe and Jim down in the studio, and this guy was friends with them too. You think about it, you'll know who it is. And he called. He was working at MCA Records at the time, I think, and he called and said, "Man, I heard Harold signed Billy Ray Cyrus." And Joe and Jim said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, he is. We're getting ready to work on that." He said, "Hell, we passed on him. That's crazy, And I remember then laughing, going, He missed Elvis. And I didn't know at the time, but he'd had enough times he'd done that.
You'd think they'd have learned.
Yeah. But none of us expected what happened with it. I can't imagine anybody expected that. I mean, I'll never forget that record, and a couple of little pieces that bear repeating on that was that record came out, and at the time, everybody doesn't remember this, but the word was Harold had a little dry spirit period in between whatever the last thing was you signed at Mercury, and the word was that Jimmy Bowen, who was a famous A&R guy, had been at every label in town, was taking over Mercury Records. Right. And I'd even asked Harold, they said, well, that's what they're saying, I'm understanding that could happen, Yeah. And nobody knew. And so that record came out. And the first 2 weeks, it did not blow up like everybody thinks it did. It did okay those first couple of weeks. And the second week, two things happened. And they happened back to back in 2 days. And I've still got all the stuff on them. On a Thursday night, there was a little girl, a little boy actually, that had cerebral palsy, that had never walked, that got up and danced to Achy Breaky Heart, and it hit the network news.
That's right.
The very next day, and you called me and told me this one, on Friday, the very next day, there was this big plant down in Florida. I'm going to say it's Lockheed. I can't remember. It's a big plant like that. I have to look it up again. And there were like 500 women that worked at this plant, and they had these big break rooms with CMT playing on the TVs. And it hit the UPI that all these women went on strike until they played the Achy Breaky Heart video again. The next day, it blew up. And I remember Harold called us the next day, and two more things happened. Don Von Tress, who wrote the song, the very next week was working. He had worked for a company that did wallpaper. That's right. And he went from across the country, taking 3 years to get across country and do this chain of nursing homes and do their wallpaper, and he'd go back to the east again, start again, and go across the country. He was in Chicago, and he called me, and he said, man, I woke up this morning, he said, and I had the TV on in my hotel room, and he said, I swear to God, I saw 5 little Japanese guys with cowboy hats in front of Mount Fujiyama singing Achy Breaky Heart, and I said, Don, I think that's real. That's how fast that all happened. That very afternoon, he called me again, and he said WGN, the big TV station, came into the room where he was doing wallpaper. And this is Don Von Tress, the guy that wrote Achy Breaky Heart. And Harold had just called me and said, do you know where Don is? And I said, yeah. And he said, yeah, give me his number. And Don called me an hour later and said, Harold called. And Harold said, I think you might have one here, Don. And he said, at the time, I didn't realize that was like anybody else having a marching band walk down the street saying, actually what was going on, Oh, yeah. But then Harold called and said, you know what he's saying? Like a day later, he said, they're calling it by the P word. And I said, what? He said, phenomenon. And none of us had ever seen anything like that before, and that record blew up. It was the craziest thing I ever saw in my life.
Yeah. It had a physical thing, too, because I remember, I always used to bring my daughter, Teal. I'd come by and see Joe and Jim, bring her down to the row. She was about 2, and they'd always put her in the seat, and play something new. And if she started, moving to it or whatever, it was usually like a top 10 record, right? Well, they played Achy Breaky Heart, and actually Billy Ray was there that day, and he had a bear that he gave to my daughter that she still got. But they played Achy Breaky Heart, and she jumped up on the chair, and I mean literally started jumping up and down, and we all kind of looked at each other like, the teal meter, just went off. It worked. But then I'll never forget the video. Then when I saw that video, and video had its place, but it was kind of like nothing exciting on video, anymore. It became like everybody trying to do something. That video was so electric when it first came out. It just jumped. I mean, it was unreal.
It was the beginning of the line dance phenomenon.
Yeah.
And
man.
Another one.
But nobody else would have signed that guy. Nobody. They all had their opportunity.
No. It was the right place and the right time and the right people involved, because Billy Ray, when Achy Breaky Heart really, we realized that you couldn't have stopped it if you wanted to, because normally where we'd ship 20,000 records to get product in the 25 major markets, we had orders for, I think, almost 2 million copies, and it was just the craziest thing you've ever seen, and it took off. And
no more Beretta.
Yeah.
No more Beretta.
Actually.
And we had, I think at the time, excuse me, I think your dad might still have been at Billboard.
Yeah, he
I
was.
think he was.
But the panel, I think, consisted of maybe 157 stations at the time made up the Billboard panel. And one guy would not play.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that
And
one.
being music guys, you'll really love this.
yeah.
Yeah. And so Sam Cerami and Gene Hughes were working in promotion at Mercury at the time. And so Sam said, you know all these Florida guys. Do you know this guy in Tampa? And I said, yeah, I know him. And he said, would you call him and see if he'll play Achy Breaky Heart? He says, it's going to go #1 next week without him, but we'd rather have the whole panel, you know?
Yep.
And so I called the guy, and he said, well, I'll take it in Monday, and we'll listen to it and one more time and see if we want to add it. And I said, it's going to be #1 before that, and it's going to be #1 whether you play it or not. We just wanted all the stations on the panel playing the record. And well, I didn't get anything other than we'll go in Monday and listen to it again. And I said, okay, well, call me back and tell me what you're going to do Monday. And he didn't call me, but he wrote me a letter, you know, and we didn't text then. So he wrote me a letter, and he said, well, I had all our people come in, and we still think it's just another 3-chord Nashville song. And so I was upset a little bit. So I just turned the letter over and I wrote on the back of it, and I mailed it back to him, and I said, this may not help you guys any, but the song only has 2 chords. That was the end of that story.
Yes. Dear dumbass.
And they played the record a week late.
Right.
They missed the fun.
Yeah.
What a great
But
story, though.
it's odd because I was of course in the center of that one, and that was a song, and boy, let this go out to all the songwriters in town that get discouraged and publishers. Everybody hated that song. I say everybody.
Yeah,
it was so split.
Everybody but the people.
That's right.
The industry, nobody in
Well,
the
you never
industry.
know, right? Because once you even tried to get Don to take the guitar lick out of that, right?
I did when we did the demo. Yeah.
But I mean, now everybody knows.
God was in charge of that one, no doubt about it. But I would play it for people, and I mean, it got so bad that the guy that was running RCA at the time, before it was all Sony, the guy that ran it for years, Joe Galani, had gone to New York for 2 years. And there was a guy in town, I'm not going to say his name because he's a friend of mine, was not such a good friend anymore, but anyway, was head of A&R, and we were good friends. And I played it for him, and I kept playing it for Arts. I was playing it for everybody because I thought it was a hit. I really thought it was a hit. And he called me one day because they had a bunch of different artists come in and want to cut it. And he said, if that song comes in the door one more time, you can't come in the building anymore. and there was a girl that worked over there, we all know, there was an A&R named Tabitha. And Tabitha called me and said, he's not kidding. I mean, and I would have those kind of reactions. People would get mad at me.
Yeah.
So when Billy Ray came along, it's one of the only artists I didn't play it for. I was going to play the song for him, and I sat down with Joe Scaife and Jim Cotton, who Harold got to produce the record, and I said, I really want to play him. We called it Don't Tell My Heart at the time. I really want to play him Don't Tell My Heart. I said, but man, I want to get the right situation because, how people get mad. You know, I've had that happen. I want to, and Joe looked at me, and Joe said, let me play it for him. I'll play it for him. I think you're right. Let me play it for him. And I'm really glad I did because I didn't know Billy Ray that. I just was getting to know him back then. And Joe played it for him. And to my surprise, Joe said he went, absolutely, that's my song, you know. So he got it from the very beginning. The interesting thing about that record, even today, and
Didn't the Marcy Brothers cut it?
They had cut it before that. Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Did you pitch it to the Headhunters?
I did, played it for the Headhunters. They passed on it.
And Oak Ridge Boys.
Oak Ridge Boys wanted to cut it, but they told us that the label wouldn't let them do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of near misses. I mean, Ronnie Millsap wanted to cut it. RCA again. And he called me, Millsap called me back and said, I had no idea how bad they hated that song over there. I told you. He said I could cut it. He said it would just be on the album. It wouldn't do you any good. He said, but I want you to promise me something. And you and I have talked about this. When they cut that song, when it's a big hit record, I want you to come get me and hold my hand and walk over there, and we'll both tell them to get screwed. But anyway, the interesting thing about that record is how big it was. If you look back on it now, every territory of the world. And it was the most divisive song I ever had. People either loved it or hated it, nothing in between. And the interesting thing is, and I've told this story a bunch, and I'm going to find this video sometime. There was to really illustrate how big it was, there was a civil war going on in Somalia that year. And we were dropping aid over to people that were starving because there was also a big famine down there, and the warlords were stealing all the food we were dropping off. And there was a big story, and so Morley Safer or Mike Wallace, one of those guys, one of those big talk shows, went down and did a thing on 60 Minutes about it. And on this newscast, they're interviewing these warlords and saying, "Oh, what, you guys are stealing this food? You know, you got a war. These people are starving." And they're interviewing them, and in the background, not even part of the story, back behind them, are these little native kids holding hands, dancing in a circle around a jam box out there.
Wow.
And guess what's playing?
Achy Breaky.
That's how big that record was. That's how big it was. That's the best story I can tell, because I
honestly
remember,
was gonna guess Cheeseburger in Paradise. I was so close. I was so close.
You were.
The really part of the key was the album title was "Some Gave All."
Yep.
And it was a song that Billy Ray had written and was a big part in signing Billy Ray, because it's a great song.
It is a great song.
And then the Vietnam Wall, they opened the Vietnam Wall in Washington, and Billy Ray was there, and he got up and sang "Some Gave All." And I've never seen that many people cry before. And so it was all, it was just something you couldn't have stopped. It's like now, I still hear "Achy Breaky Heart" on the radio.
Well, Harold,
and it's been recorded over 100 times in as many different languages.
Yep.
I mean, it's a phenomenon.
Yeah. In Mexico, it's a wedding song, isn't it?
Yep.
I
It
think
is. The Caballo Dorado version, No Rompas Mas.
There you go.
In Mexico, they have what they call the Four Corners dance. It's become part of their culture now, where they do this dance and Achy Breaky Heart plays. Why it plays at weddings, I don't know, but it is a big wedding song now. The Caballo Dorado.
Maybe it's fun also.
Yep.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
Well, Harold, there was a rumor, and we can cut this out if you don't want it in here, but there was a rumor that I remember, I don't know who told me this, but that Billy Ray, after that ceremony and everything, said, "Hey man, God came to me kind of in a dream, and we need to put out."
No, that was before the record came out.
But he said, "Some gave all," and you replied something like, "Well, tell God really sorry, we're putting out Achy Breaky or something."
No, he said. No, he told me God. He had talked to God, and he thought I should put it out on. I don't remember the month it came out, but on a certain day of that
Veterans
month.
Day or Memorial Day or something.
And I said, well, no, I told him, I said, have God call me and I'll go over the release schedule.
I always love that story. I always love that.
He was mad because y'all
But
kept
Billy Ray got it too,
because y'all kept moving the release date, trying to time it right. He called me. Oh my God, that's funny.
That's
Tell them the story about Lisa.
About
Billy Ray and Lisa Harless.
Oh yeah. Well,
I love it.
It was such a big seller, and
Achy Breaky.
my boss from New York called me, and I'll tell you a story about my boss. I worked for the greatest man ever, and Dick Asher.
Yeah.
Wow.
Famous A&R
in
guy.
the record business, and in fact,
Fine job.
I asked him, I says, Mr. Asher, what do you expect of me at Mercury? And what do you expect me or want me to do there? And he said, I want Mercury to be a viable record company. We've been kind of not sucking the hind tit, but you know, it hasn't. It could be better.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, and I want you to restructure the roster and do some things. And so I had a free hand to do whatever I wanted to do, and it was an opportunity for me to do some of the things I'd always wanted to do, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
That's why we didn't do the same thing over and over and over. We did something new every time and something different every time. Mm-hmm. So it was very successful because, you know, we took Mercury from a $8 million a year company to a $70 million a year company in 4.5 years.
Wow.
And that was pretty impressive, you know, even for them. That was pretty impressive. So all of that, point was because of our signings, Headhunters, Sammy, and then Toby Keith came along right then, and Shania Twain. Plus, we had Kathy Mattea, and I kept her on the label. And John Vesner, that Russ had signed to write for us at the publishing company, wrote,
John,
Where Have You Been?
Where have you been?
And man,
what a song.
she was suddenly female vocalist of the year with
That was a
song of the
huge
year,
song.
record of the year. So everything just, it all worked so well. And then Toby should have been a cowboy.
Gosh.
Every light in the house is on.
Man, yeah. Wish I didn't know now.
Oh, yeah.
A little less talk, a lot more action.
Everybody wouldn't have.
Well, we really.
He ain't worth missing. Who's that man running my life? All this stuff is happening. And Shania comes along, and we got all of that going on.
Well, you remember back before then, right before then, especially New York and LA, the only time they came to town, those people or even paid attention was during CMA week.
Sure.
Come here for the BMI awards. Ask, I remember everybody have to go around and kiss their butt.
As one of those people, I would just come to accept the awards everybody else got from me.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and
it was a lot of fun.
Me as being that person, I would watch a person get the award for what I'd done, and then the new company I was with, I would get the one that you had done.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Right.
You know. But what you did, Harold, it was different, and that I think was you sold freaking records.
Yep.
You didn't just have hit songs, you sold records. You got
marketing and promotion people, and I have to give Paul Lux, who is, in my opinion, the greatest record man ever in Nashville.
Really? Wow.
I worked with him, and I saw his act, and he's, man, we had, just like our publishing thing, we had a team of people that I don't know if you could put it together again today or not, because everybody wanted to be there.
Yep.
That was there.
Having
you know
fun.
what I mean? Like,
having fun.
we were having
was
fun
number one.
and
We
a
all had
lot of
fun.
success, and it was just a great time to be in the record business.
Yeah, man.
you know?
Hey, in true Nashville fashion, after Achy Breaky Heart, I'll never forget a conversation you and I had, and I think it really illustrates this whole thing. Right about the time Achy Breaky blew up so big, there had been a couple of unique things with that. And one of them, not the least of which, was Billy went in with his own band instead of using studio players, which was a big deal. So another competitor of yours in town signed a guy that had kind of a haircut sort of like Billy's and went in with his own band and tried to cut a song that sounded like Achy Breaky Heart. And it had just come out, and I remember you and I sat down, and I said, have you seen this guy, yada, yada, yada? And you said no, and I told you about it, and you said they're trying to cop Billy Ray, and you looked at me and you said, it's just you, me, and him, you said, I'm not going to tell anybody, there's only one, are you? I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Yeah.
What was the Billy Ray story you were talking
Oh,
Lisa.
you know the one, Lisa Harless.
Oh yeah. Well, I lost. I got off track.
Yeah.
Well, my boss called me and he said, Billy Ray is doing so well. Says I'm going to send you some money for him, and I want you to deliver it to him personally. Because I think he'll be surprised. And I said, okay. So he sent me a channel. So I called Billy Ray, and he said, "Well," I said, "I want to sit and talk to you a little bit and go over some things with you." And he said, "Well, meet me at the house." And I said, "Okay." And at the time, he lived out on the river where they do the kayaking. What is it?
Bellevue? No, not Bellevue.
Harpeth.
Harpeth on the Harpeth River, yeah.
Yeah, across the Harpeth at Waco.
That's right.
Billy Walker. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different deal.
But anyway, so I got the check in and I opened it up, and it was $1,600,000. Wow, So I put it back. We went out, rode. He had a couple of ATVs already, and he lived on 80 acres, so we rode. He didn't know why I
He was squatting,
there.
wasn't he? Was he squatting at that house? He wasn't paying rent. He just kind of lived there.
No, he owned it.
He did buy it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he owned it. And when I left, he paid for it. But we rode around, and then we played some pool, and I left the envelope on the corner of the pool table, and I says, "This is for you, and I'm going to go on, and I'll see you a little bit later." And then the next morning is when I got a call from Lisa Harless at the bank, and she said, "You won't believe what just happened." And I said, "Well, I don't know. Tell me what just happened." And she said, "Your artist," said, "went through the drive-through and deposited $1,600,000."
It was me, Jim Cotton, and Joe Scaife in the car. I was with him. It was the branch right across from right there at
right there in the corner.
Wedgwood.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
No, it was
You
in
were
that old
there?
silver Cadillac.
I
We were
didn't
going
know
to lunch,
that.
and all of a sudden the lady was like, "Sir, you're going to have to come in." Well, none of us knew, right? We were just like, "Billy, what?" He's like, "Well, it's kind of big. So how much is it?" He goes, It says 1.6. We're like, holy shit, Billy! You're gonna have to go inside, dude.
Yeah, she said, we usually take these kind of customers to dinner.
He's driving through the drive-thru.
That's so loud that I was there. That was funny.
And he wanted $20 back or something, didn't he? Seems like that's what you told me. He tried to deposit and wanted $20 back.
Yeah, that'd have been about right.
Want some cash back.
It could have.
He was so Billy Ray though that when that really hit, it took a while for it to register.
Right.
How big
But
it was.
the whole thing, it was like that. It was really educational and a lot of fun and boy, a lot of success for the artists,
Oh, heck yeah.
That's a blast.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. Fun to watch.
It was, yeah. It's fun to be a part
100%
of.
writer of too.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, if you're only going to have one big hit, I recommend it.
Yeah, I think Don agrees.
Yeah.
It's funny how those things happen. I remember Tim Dubois. Okay, when I was at House of Gold, Tim was teaching accounting at Vanderbilt.
Yep.
And he would come and hang out at House of Gold, later in the day, like 3-4 o'clock, and he'd be in his accounting looking stuff, and come in, and he asked everybody to write this song with him. I mean, just come on, write this song with me. And nobody, they just kind of brushed him off about it or whatever. So he finally said the heck with him, wrote it by himself, and it was I Got the Shaft, She Got the Gold Mine, I Got the Shaft, ended up being a number one record, Grammy winner. He wrote it by himself. Nobody else could write it with him.
Best kind.
But what a great story, right? Like, please write this with me, please write it. And, Tim didn't do bad after that either.
That's right.
Tim was always a great guy to,
good guy,
but he was such a good guy to deal with.
Listen here, little mister.
Think about this. I was on a plane, loaded plane, returning from the Grammys in L.A., and I'm flying in Nashville, and a flight attendant hands me a cassette, and I get home and play it, got my car out of the park and play. Next day, booked a flight, go back where I'd just come from to see this guy, and this cassette had 5 songs on it. 3 of them were number 1s and 2 were top 5s.
Whoa!
Wow!
Now, think of that ever happening anywhere.
Nope.
5 songs.
Yeah.
No.
That, believe it or not, 2 other major labels in town had heard and rejected because they told the guy he couldn't write or sing.
Somebody was wrong.
So
Wow.
that's why you got to listen to it.
So who was that artist?
Toby.
Exactly.
No, there you go.
Toby Keith.
Wow.
Yeah, think
So
of
who was the
Toby.
flight attendant? Did you give her a job?
Yeah.
Here's my song.
that. She had a great job, but she was a big fan already.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a Billy Ray thing.
Wow.
Right.
Before she went to school in Las Cruces in New Mexico, and he played that college circuit,
Sure.
and she had seen him and met him
Got the same
and
deal.
became
Yep.
friends and loved his songs,
Right.
even though they weren't on the radio and never had been on the radio.
I know a guy
But-
that knows a guy.
Yeah.
there you go.
There you go.
I have a friend. Well, that's what she told me. Said,
Yeah.
I have a friend that sings. I'm thinking, everybody's got a friend that sings. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I tried to record one of them,
Yeah.
But anyway, the next day, it impressed me enough that I went
Turned
right
around,
back
went
out
back.
to where,
Wow.
talked to him, and I stayed. Oh, you won't believe this. And rap had just started, and there was some country rap, but not much. Mostly, R&B kind of
Right.
black stuff, and it was really popular. And in a club, when the jukebox plays, it's at intermission and stuff, it's usually cover songs, but happened to be at this time rapping music. And Toby says, look, I have to play all covers for the first 2 sets, but the last set, if you can stay that long, I'll do you some of my original stuff. And I did, and he did in the last set. And so at the end of the last set, he did all this original stuff. Jukebox came back on, this rapping like crazy, and set before the last set, and his band got on stage while the rap music is happening on a jukebox, and when the jukebox stopped, you couldn't tell the difference from his band. That's how aware they were, you know, and how cool they were. You couldn't tell the rap had ended.
He just went right into
His band had it down just like a record. Yeah, and Toby was really an incredible artist. Also, well, hell, he sold. He when he died, he was worth $500 million. You know, he sold over 100,000 records, and
I always loved his commitment to the military.
Exactly.
100 million, yeah. And
I'm in charge of the last.
Should Have Been a Cowboy was the most played record in the 90s.
I believe it.
And it got over 7 million airplays. And
Wow.
His commitment to the service too was unreal. He'd go behind.
He was a
lines.
real patriot, man.
Right. I mean, he performed for like 10 people in a bunker while they're.
But we were so fortunate to have been there, you know, at that time. All of us.
Once again,
all of us guys.
Yep.
And that's why I love all you guys so much, you know.
Well, same here.
We
know what? The interesting thing to me about Toby, you know, as good of a songwriter as he was, he didn't need any songs from anybody.
Nope.
He's not just in the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. He's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame in New York. All the greatest, Hoagie Carmichael and everybody else.
Yes.
And if he's nothing else, he's as good a songwriter as ever lived.
Absolutely.
Agreed?
I agree.
And so today, or most of the time that we've been in this business, a lot of artists want to have their name on a song or won't cut a song if they weren't a writer on it. We've experienced that. More so today where there's anywhere from 3 to 20 writers on a song, and nobody's going to cut an outside song, otherwise we can't pitch songs anymore. Mm-hmm. So Harold had played me that tape he's talking about with all the songs on it. And I remember the one song was not a hit, but the one I heard on that tape, and you and I talked about this, was a song called "Close But No Guitar" he wrote. This is on the first album, and I went, I got to tell you,
what a cool song that was.
It was. And Harold said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I don't know, but I've never heard that song in my life. I've heard everything you can write. I've never heard that when that guy can write songs."
Close But No Guitar.
And we laughed at that. Well, Harold had told Toby that I'd said that. So the first night I met Toby, when we first met, he said, your boss told me you like that Close But No Guitar. I said, hell, we both do. We both said we never heard it before. And he goes, man, that's cool. And we started talking, and we hung out. It was at the party after fanfare that year, when Achy Breaky had been so big. And so he and I are back in this yard meeting and talking for hours. Everybody's having a party and drinking beer and everything. And, you know, I'm assuming this guy is such a great writer. I didn't even mention playing songs for him. And it got to be about 11 o'clock at night. You know, party was going on. And he said, well, man, are you going to play me some songs? And I said, man, I'd love to. But I figured you're probably going to write all of them. He said, man, I'm up for hearing. If you got a hit song, I'd love to hear it. I said, well, I think I do. And he said, when you want to do it? And I said, I don't know when you want to. He said, how about right now?
Yeah.
I said, okay. So we went to the music
3 a.m.
Hung out till 1 or 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I played him a
Dedicated.
song.
That's the way it used to be.
That's the way it used to be.
Fun, man.
And he said, I'm going to cut those 2 songs. We played songs all evening and all early in the morning. And I said, okay, well, you know what that means.
Yeah.
They might cut it, you know.
Right.
I'll be damned if he didn't cut both of them. One was a #1 record. This is one of the greatest writers that ever lived. But Toby wanted the best song no matter what. That's all he cared. He cared about those songs. And, you know, I got to wonder, and I'm just like a bunch of old guys I know, but I wonder if anybody thinks that way today.
No.
I always wonder that, you know.
Yeah. I heard a great story about Toby.
Well, the opportunity is not there either.
Right.
You know?
Because I don't know if you guys heard this story about Toby, but, you know, when he was out on the road, he used to keep like a basketball goal up under the bus, right? Because he'd work out, because he was a big athlete. A lot of people don't know. He was a big college football player, you know. Well, there's a guy who'll remain nameless. If I named him, you'd know this is a true story. But they get he goes out on the road. He's going to write with him, right? So he's on the bus with him. Toby gets up in the morning, you know, he's like, hey, man, I'm going to go out and shoot some baskets, you know, work out. You want to come with me? And he said, I didn't come out here to play basketball. Came out here to write songs, you know, you get serious about it, you know. And it said, Toby just kind of turned around and looked at him and he goes, nah, I'm just messing with you, man. You know, do whatever you got to do. Well, Toby goes out and he's like dunking the ball, you know, comes back in, and Toby he's a hoss, right?
He's a big boy.
Well, all of a sudden he comes back in and just looks over at his face and says, let me tell you something, you son of a bitch. I didn't come out here. I brought you out here when I'm ready to write a song. Blah blah. You know, kind of got in his face. And he goes, wink. I'm just messing with you, but just kind of let him know.
Yeah.
But you know, and I'll tell you guys off camera who it was. It's a hilarious story.
I think I know
It's
who
a
it is.
great story.
Yeah.
But that's who Toby was. It was real.
Yep.
You know, I mean, what you saw is what you got. You know.
Yeah, man.
And usually with just about every successful artist, that's the way it was. It wasn't always that
Well,
way.
he did
but-
play with the Oklahoma Drillers when
Right. Yep.
World Football League.
Yep.
He used to play in our Music Row basketball. When we had our Music Row
really?
game, he
Oh,
played
did
out
he
there all the
really?
time. Yeah. He's a good basketball player.
Yeah, he's a good athlete.
He's a great. He was one of the.
American.
You couldn't have an artist any better than Toby. You know, no one was like Toby. He was different.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun to watch people if they, you know, like.
He
They
sold
change.
over 100 million records.
That's phenomenal.
But you watch those people change, you know, after they have a couple of hits, and you just watch them just send.
Yep.
You know,
Nose down.
I remember there was a band or a group. It was a duo that I was working with. I won't mention, but they went on.
There's only been 6.
Yeah. But they were on the Ralph Emery show, right? And their first single was out on Sony, and they were like, they looked stiff and they weren't having fun. And these were two of the most fun guys to hang with in the world, right? And I saw them the next morning. I was like, gosh, what are you doing? I was like, that's not who you are. And what's going to happen is, if you have success, you're going to go back to who you were initially, and everybody's going to think you're an asshole and you've changed. I mean, that's the way it would go when people fake, you know, all the persona of who they were. Eventually, that would wear off, and everybody got to know them, and they slowly disappeared. But
They go more business and less music.
Roger would say, "Am I who you think I
That's
am?"
exactly right. He would. Why do you think I am?
Yeah. On a flight one day, quick Roger, a guy kept gurming him, and, you know, he had a tape and a lyric sheet, and
pitching Roger.
and
Miller.
Roger said, I can't, there's nowhere to hear the tape. He said, well, take the lyric sheet, and gave it to him, and plane landed, started to get off, and Roger walked with a guy and handed him the lyric sheet back. The guy opened it up and he'd put C minus.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
It didn't quite make the cut.
Didn't quite make it.
Some of the old stories, like him and
Kind of
Johnny,
average.
Yeah.
I think it was him and Johnny McRae were one of them that were in his new Cadillac, and they'd gone off the interstate. It was a convertible or whatever, you know, and the police came up. They're like, have you been drinking? Well, I usually don't drive in the fucking ditch. His answer to the cop. But back then, they just say, oh, you're so-and-so, go, you know, go back.
Go.
You're good. Bye. I love the story about the old, like you go back to like Lynn Anderson and what was his name? Funniest man on the planet. Not Lynn. But
Glenn Sutton?
yes.
Oh, God.
The stories of Sutton wrecking the Cadillacs, and he'd just go down and buy a brand new one because didn't want to tell her that he totaled another Cadillac.
I was
And-
like, go ahead.
And no, but because that was David Preston's dad, who was selling the Cadillacs.
Sold the
There was
Cadillacs, yeah.
Preston Lincoln Mercury back then. But Sutton, I don't know if you guys ever had a chance to hang out with Sutton, but
Funny.
the funniest man, probably right
was
there with
funny.
Roger Miller. You know,
Where we met Jason the first time, he was a waiter at Closed Quarters.
oh my gosh,
Which was
Rock and
just
Roll
like,
Hotel.
Quarters,
yeah,
my
America's
goodness.
only rock and roll hotel,
Yeah.
right? And it was
Crazy.
This place was, if somebody made a movie about Closed Quarters at that brief period of time, it wasn't open for very long. It was a terrible business model.
Right.
It was a tremendous hangout, but it was a terrible business model. But it was not uncommon to be in there and have a great big table full of people, all of which were pretty famous.
Yeah, Roger
You know,
Cook.
but
Yeah.
it would be Cook, Cook and Braddock and
Yeah.
Harlan Howard and Roger
And then
Miller
when Skinner
would be
was in
there.
town.
Guys from Skinner would be in there. The guys we got in the fight. Allman Brothers, they were like literally
Oh, yeah,
just
they lived
there.
there.
Literally did. I mean, Greg Allman lived on the
And
right.
you know, if you'll remember, okay, you used to walk in, right, and it had the wood
Yep.
on the side of the
There was a
fence.
gate to the right.
But it had the greenhouse.
Yep.
Initially, there
That
was
was
a
the hot
hot
tub.
tub
Yeah, yeah.
in the
Still a hot
greenhouse
tub.
Yeah.
and dinner seats around it.
I didn't remember that.
Hanging
No, it was
Oh.
before you started coming
Well,
up, but it was underneath where they ended up having dinner seats.
Wow.
My
Well, they
dad
ended up covering
my
it up.
dad lived up there, and I remember the first time I came down for the summertime to spend time with Dad, and we pulled into town about 2:00 in the morning, and
Place was rocking.
rocking doesn't define
Yeah.
it. And so you had a special little card to
get
show
in,
through the
yeah,
gate, and I walk in, and there are naked women around the hot tub,
Yeah.
and people in there partying their asses off, and I just was like, so this is where we live, huh?
I remember
Yep.
you'd knock on the bathroom door because there'd be a line like, "Hey, we got drugs too."
Yeah, exactly.
Get the hell out of there.
There was so much. There was literally there was so much cocaine in that place at one time that
Yeah.
it was shocking. But I had a friend of mine that still a friend of mine, but he would buy cocaine at the bar on his corporate Amex
yep.
card, because back then, you'd swipe it on the machine, and then you'd write in the number.
Yeah.
You might call the 800 number and you'd get an approval code. But the music business was fun in the 80s,
Yeah.
so we would just be up there and he'd swipe. It was no big deal for somebody to go out and spend $500 at dinner in the record business.
No.
So the fact that he spent $16 at dinner and $478 on cocaine just didn't raise any red flags for years.
They'll never
And
notice.
the best part of it was his boss caught him eventually that he was in there doing it and sent him to rehab and let him keep his job.
Well, we used to come in there to the next day for lunch, and the manager would be Debbie. Would
Yep.
be sitting in there doing the accounts from the night before, and all of a sudden, I remember one day I'm out there setting up the restaurant, and all of a sudden I hear Debbie go, "Who took a check from Bedwell?"
Back in, when you could, hey, let me just write you a check.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
write a check.
Are y'all here to have lunch? No, just covering yesterday's. Yeah.
Last night.
Yep, going in there, and oh man, Holly.
My head
But it
hurts.
was really, I remember being in with a famous member of a trio of singers one time, and he dropped an 8-ball of cocaine in the toilet while we were talking. He was doing this, and
Yeah.
And by the way, none of us do cocaine anymore.
No.
For those of you, you can come search my house. Don't search my son's room, just the rest of the house. But I mean, and it was the saddest I'd ever seen anybody to that date, right?
Just crying.
And I'm a preacher's kid. I've been to like 80 funerals at that point. And I looked at his face and was like, that's the saddest I've ever seen anybody in my life. And he's just looking in the toilet. It's like, if you could have had a picture of that, right? But
I've seen that
yeah,
show.
I was pretty disappointed myself.
I would have had to go for the 3-second rule.
Well, there's a theory that that's how crack cocaine was invented.
Yeah, right.
They just took it up, boiled it, and then the next thing you know, it makes little crystals.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
it was all
that's
started
funny.
by a famous
Oh, my
singer on the
God,
Opry.
that's funny.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a crazy place. But the reason I bring it up is because it was all characters, right? So
Yeah.
I got here, came here the first time in '79, moved to Nashville in 1980. And in 1980, everybody that was of any interest in the up and down 16th Avenue was a character.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You think about Don
A lot of
Gantz
characters.
just
Bob
Beckham.
Bob Beckham, just the
Yeah.
publishers alone were all characters.
Jack Clement.
Buddy
Oh God, yeah, right.
Cowboy.
Clement. I mean,
Yeah.
Jiminy
Cowboy.
Christmas. I mean, what was going on around this city was
And
amazing.
Bill Hall.
Oh my God, yeah.
And Rick
Oh,
Hall.
and Roger,
And Rick, yeah.
Roger, and Picklick, Ralph, and
Ralph, oh my God,
Murphy,
yeah.
Yeah.
Roger,
That whole thing-
Harlan,
Roger Cook, yeah.
Yeah,
Harlan
Roger
and his
Cook.
White Russians at Maud's.
Oh my
yeah.
God!
Harlan.
I made a joke about the White Russians, Harold. That one day I was driving Chuck to work.
Grant Boatwright.
Oh, Boatwright, yeah,
Ronnie
Boatwright. That's
Somerset. Remember Ronnie?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
God.
man.
Samoset.
Sonny Throckmorton. They're all just
Sonny.
wild weirdos.
Yep.
Hood.
And
Yeah.
when I first came, Hillman Hall, Tom T's
wow.
brother.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Tom T.
God.
Yeah, he
I
told me
worked
the
for Tom T
story
for years.
about
Brian?
I did. I
we
ran
were-
around with Tom T.
At that time, down on 19th and Division, the club has been there for a long. It was called, I think, Cantrell.
Can't
Yeah,
tell.
yeah.
It would rain and it would come right through the roof.
Yeah.
Hillman, and we were talking, and he just had a big hit with Johnny Rodriguez, and I said, "How did you write a song like that?" And he said, "Oh, actually, I didn't write that." I said, "Well, your name's on it." And he said, "Yeah, I won it from Tom T in a poker game."
That is it. That's it right there.
Yeah.
That says it all.
Yeah, that was the deal.
Yeah,
you know?
that was it.
Everybody you talked to was interesting.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, there used to be a hell of a card game. What was across from BMI? What was the hotel there?
No, Spence Manor.
Spence Manor.
Up in Spence
Yeah.
Manor. the
Spence
condo.
Manor, yeah.
Yeah.
hell of card games.
Because that was where Larry Butler and
Yeah.
Chips Moman and those guys.
That's right.
And man, remember the golf
Grant Bowman
tournaments
was
back
up there.
then?
They did. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Remember like Larry Butler golf tournaments? They'd be down at. You
Yeah.
lost a couple of good jobs over those.
I think Chuck's the only guy I know that's been fired more time than I have.
Well, Chuck's actually been fired more times than he's been hired.
You know, I fired Chuck one time.
yeah. Oh, hell, we've all
Hired
fired
him back the next day.
You know what? You know, when.
Hired him back.
What,
Well,
what-
let me tell you the story, okay? Harold one day, and Harold wasn't the boss of like, I'm going to bring everybody together every morning and tell you what I want from you and all that. That was not what Harold wanted.
Right, right.
If you were there, it was kind of understood you knew what you were there for.
Right.
Just do it, which was
Right.
awesome, okay? Well, so...
well, if you did.
Yeah. Well, so this day, Harold brings in, and it's everybody. Donnie Lowry was there, all the writer, Cotton and Scape, and Harold starts talking, and he was unhappy with this, and these people left. And then he was kind of unhappy with what this was going, and those people left. Well, all of a sudden, I look around, and it's just me and Scape. Right? And all of a sudden, he looks at me, and he said, "Well, if you'd spend a little less time living at the Tavern on the Row," maybe. And that was the only time Harold really gave me any like parenting advice.
Yeah.
But it was really like, if you just do your fucking job, I wouldn't have to have this conversation.
If you'd at least entertain the possibility.
But it never really hit on me that it was coming down to me until I'm the only one left in.
Exactly. Everybody that's going to be here tomorrow, please step forward. Not so fast, Chuck.
Chuck.
Well, Chuck and Harold may not know this, but right after Chuck got fired from that best job, we decided we'd start. This is when we got to know Russ too, because that's when we started Cuts. Which
that's
was our
right.
song plugging service.
Oh, yeah.
And
It was gonna
Cuts,
be Cuts.
C-U-T-S, it stood for Chuck's Unfortunate Temporary Situation.
That's exactly what it was. I forgot all about that.
We're going to use mine, but it's butts, and it's just not. It just doesn't have the same punch. You know?
And then
Was this before the Turks? Or,
This would have been. This probably this
No,
before the
'cause
Turks.
you remember
Yeah, it's
the
before
Young Turks? Yeah.
When we started the Young Turks, so that was one of the cool things about who we worked for. I worked for Rob Galbraith and Ronnie Millsap. Chuck's working for Harold, and there was this very clear line between the young guys and the old guys.
Yeah.
And there was like, it was. They didn't have to engage in a conspiracy theory to accomplish this. They just naturally did it. The old guys didn't talk to the young guys.
Right.
You had to work your way up, you know.
Right.
And I remember one time I made a relatively horrible mistake, and I was guilty
You
of
got
the
divorced, though, didn't you?
no, yeah, it was all right. No, I didn't actually go through with the wedding, but Kippy, I apologize. But I had said something to Larry Butler that was not particularly complimentary of Tom Collins, and Larry thought it was funny.
So he told.
And he's an old guy. He was one of you guys. He was the Untouchables, right? So he told Tom Collins. Well, the only problem with that is that Tom Collins, of course, produced my boss. So the next thing you know, I show up at work at Millsaps like 9:30 or in the morning or whatever, and I get a call from Ronnie. Well, I never talked to Ronnie. I mean, he just owned it. He didn't work there, you know. So Ronnie called and he said, "Could you come down to my office, son?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir." That's the only thing I could think of to say. And I didn't know he had an office in the building because, you know, he's Ronnie Millsap. What the hell did he need an office in our building for? You know, he had that big old house on Franklin Road.
Yeah.
Turns out he had an office, kind of a nice one.
Oh, no.
So I got down there and I walked in and the lights are all turned off because, you know,
He's blind.
he's blind and he didn't, never occurred to him, right?
I'll leave this on for Brian.
Right? But I walked in there and stood in the dark for about 5 of the most awkward minutes of my young career. And I'm standing there in the dark and Tom Collins shows up. And Tom always wore a suit and tie, you know. And so I happened to have on a jacket and tie that day. And Tom walked in and he says, "Brian, you can turn on the lights, son." And then Ronnie started laughing. But the old guy thing was very clear at that moment when Tom Collins looked at me and he said, "Son, have you had a bunch of hits that I'm unaware of?" Right? I was like, "No, sir." And he said,
maybe you ought to
"I mean,
learn to."
have you co-written some things that I might know about?" And I'm like, "No, sir." And he said, "I'm just curious because your buddy Larry Butler called me yesterday and said this and this and this, you know." It was all true. You know. And by the way, it was also...
What was it you said?
I was accusing Tom Collins of occasionally hearing a good idea for a song and having the kids in the basement write it for him. Right? And I think it was fairly accurate. Now, I was... So, you know, didn't really matter. But so I thought, well, you know, I've been here 3 or 4 months. I've had a good run, you know. I got to be in the music business. I've been backstage at the Opry. I got to take my parents to a Millsap show. Me and Chucky went up there. And I figured I'd had a good run. That was my time, you know. And I went back to my office and I sat down up there. And here comes Galbraith, who never came in before 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I went in there.
He was actually your boss.
Yeah.
That was my actual, the person that hired me and paid me, right? So I went in his office and I shut the door and I sat down, you know, my tail between my legs, and I told him what happened. And he said, "What?" And I said, "Well, this happened. I said this." And he said, "Don't move. I'll be right back." He disappears, right? And he came back about he was gone a while, but I had to stay in his office because he said, "Don't." He came back and he said, "If anybody from that office ever calls you again, you sit still till I get here. You work for me. You don't work for Ronnie Millsap, and you sure as fuck don't work for Tom Collins." And he says, "Fact is, what you said was accurate, and the reality is,
I remember that.
I have to stay out of this." He said, "And you might have made a mistake politically, but it's none of their damn business." And he took up for me, right? And that was about the time we started the Young Turks, and it was the first time I'd ever been protected by one of you guys. You know? You guys were the guys that were producing multi-platinum albums, and we were just a couple of yo-hos from the hillbillies that were trying to figure out what to do.
Well, you know, I told Harold the other day, and he didn't know this, but when the Young Turks started, okay, we just had this thing where we decided, since none of the older guys would help us, we were all the tape copy guys, so we knew the catalog better than anybody at the publishing company, because after you hear a song 58 times, you kind of remember it.
Kind of do.
So we decided, hey man, we'll just get together and we'll trade secrets, and then we'll get big producers to come in and talk to us, you know. And then I went to Frances Preston and told her my idea. And she said, "You've got full use of BMI." So all of a sudden, we get the big meeting room.
Yep, we had the beautiful conference room.
And they'd have a case of beer on ice. The only rules were there were no rules.
And we couldn't pitch songs.
Yeah, you couldn't play.
Our deal
anybody.
was you can't play music at the Young Turks.
No, the only person that could play music was the producer or whoever it was that would come in.
The guest.
And they would play you either a couple things they'd already done or a couple of songs they had on hold to keep you from... Okay, I've already got my up-tempo positive song. Don't sing me any of those or whatever. And so it was just called, we didn't even have a name. Yep. And then Mel Tillis said one day at the office, "Well, what is that? A bunch of Young Turks?" Because Sonny was in it.
Sonny was part of it.
That's how the name. That's how it became the Young Turks.
That's it.
You took me to one Turks meeting And I guess I never really came back a whole lot. But,
You were like below the Young Turks age-wise.
I was in the tape room, I was in the tape room at Tree. And but you're right, man. The guys in the tape room knew.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. The only person we didn't play songs for. We had meetings with the Judds, and Barry Beckett would come, and you'd come, and we had a whole bunch of people come through. One guy, do you remember who it was? Wouldn't allow us to do it unless we all played him a song. We had one guest.
What? Who was it?
Conway Twitty.
Oh, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like 1984.
Well,
he was the
Conway
best.
knew how to separate because
Yep.
Harold liked that song. I'm not sure Conway would do it.
Right.
You remember he separated himself from
Yep.
Conway.
Yep.
And it was to go out there to Twitty City.
Yep.
And out there behind the old Johnny Cash
It's
museum
still there,
out there in
yeah.
Hendersonville. I loved playing songs.
He
for
would
him.
even say, I wouldn't do that song. He said, but give me a copy. I'll play it for Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He was a great
Really?
song man. Think about the songs he played. You know.
It really did. They ended up writing about it in Billboard, and so it became the article in Billboard. And they called out me and Chuck because we started it, but they listed all the members that were allowed to be that were allowed to be listed. It was. But then it became kind of a thing.
Yep.
If you weren't in the church, you were in trouble.
Then it was a problem, right? We created an accidental cartel.
And then it became that it was just a guy thing. So
then Ree Geyer and Leslie. Then I split. Jewel came in. Leslie came in.
Chick with Hits.
Well, that came out way later though, because we let the girls.
That was. We called it something else. But
Yeah.
You
know what?
With blunts.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep thinking about this, but you were talking about misstepping in that whole deal.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, one of the things I remember that happened is you were still working at Millsap, and you were a little further along the way, and Ronnie Millsap was up for Single of the Year, Song of the Year. Yeah, for Lost in the 50s
Academy
tonight.
of Music,
and
yeah.
you were still that young guy.
But I was still, I was literally just the lowest guy on the totem pole.
I'm still in Alabama, and I'm watching the ACM Awards on my little TV, black and white TV at home, starving to death. And they announced that it's won Song of the Year, and all of a sudden Brian walks out and gives the damn speech with Ronnie Millsap. We're all going,
I remember that.
Well, it was funny
you
about
can imagine
it too.
how excited all the right. Go ahead, tell the story.
This is it. You remember this is 1986. So it was the night that the United States bombed Libya.
Right.
Remember that?
Oh, wow.
And so they preempted the ACM show by like 2 hours. It was when it was down at Knott's Berry Farm.
Wow.
In the theater, right? Remember that? And so I'm sitting there. So
why were you
during
there?
this break,
Tell them why you were there.
yeah, well, I was there because I was dating this girl,
There you
Tina
go.
Snow, who lived in L.A.
While he had a
And-
girlfriend in Nashville's part of the story, too.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I might have been dating Kippy Brannon here at the same time. And so I'm sitting there, and Ronnie says, well, you sit in my seats, because he didn't like being in crowds, because he, I guess just because he's
Yeah, but weren't
blind.
you asked last minute to go so you could...
Well, he asked me during that break, so I was there. I was in kind of a tuxedo, whatever the '80s
you're
version
blind,
of that
could you be
was. What's that?
claustrophobic?
No, yeah, he was. He was
How can you be
weirdly
claustrophobic if you're blind?
He
You
just
don't know
didn't.
if
He didn't
anybody's
like
around.
knowing who wasn't around. I think more than anything else.
Okay,
But
I got you.
but so he was sitting in. We used to know fourth row. I'm a song plugger. I'm like 24-year-old song plugger, and I'm sitting next to the Oak Ridge Boys and Lee Greenwood and Alabama and Juice Newton. I'm sitting in this third row or fourth row, whatever it was, at the ACMs in his seats. So he told me in the break, while they preempted the show and they put TVs on the stage, Dick Clark came out and said, hey, we're going to show you the news coverage because the United States has just bombed Libya. So I went back and I was talking to Ronnie, and he said, what you dressed like, son? And I said, well, Ronnie, I got on, kind of a tuxedo like everybody else. And he said, if we win that Song of the Year thing, why don't you come up there and get it with me? And I'm like, really? It's like, and I said, okay. He says, so go out and sit in my seat so you're not all the way in the balcony. So I sat in his seats. So the cameraman had been told, when the winner goes, you go to these seats. Mm-hmm. You go to seat 8F, and there's going to be the winner.
I remember taking a drink, but
Yeah, right?
Me too.
Now,
Me too.
you got to keep in mind, I had just been this is just shortly after my political, bad move. My boss did not know about this conversation. So Rob is back here watching it in Green Hills at his house. Mike Reed is sitting down there at his house watching it on TV. They're watching it on TV, and all of a sudden, Ronnie stands up And then here I go. They're covering me because I'm in Ronnie's seat. And I lean over and gave my girlfriend a kiss on the cheek because it seemed like the thing to do. And I walked up there and they're following me on top. I don't know this. I'm just going up there because cool. I get to go on stage with Ronnie Millsap. So I got up there and I'm standing behind him. And they hand me the trophy. And I'm standing there holding the ACM award. Well, then Tim Whipperman looks because they co-published it. And Whipperman's like, in the balcony, he ran down like a crazy person and jumped up next to me, right? Because he thought, hell, the publishers are supposed to go up, which was not the case. But I'm standing there holding this thing. And then Ronnie says, Brian, are you here, son? I said, yes, Ronnie, I'm right here. And he says, well, come on up and thank the writers. And he had me come up and thank the writers. And then fucking Galbraith is sitting in Nashville watching TV, throwing shit at the TV, going like, holy shit, he thinks because Ronnie's blind, he can just walk up on the damn stage. And then Ronnie said my name and he says, holy shit, he's got Ronnie in on it too.
And then your real girlfriend back in Nashville,
she might have seen it on TV.
You kissing Kippy.
Yeah, things didn't go that great with Kippy after I got back.
No.
That was fun.
No, but it was funny. I think honest to God, I think that's why I had a continuing career. Everybody all of a sudden thought I must be hot shit if Ronnie was having me accept a Song of the Year award for a song I had nothing to do with.
You're talking about those missteps. When I was working at 1010, Stacy Earle wrote for us.
Right.
Steve Earle's
Right.
sister. And one day she comes in, and so my office is facing the Five-Side building across from Reba's building. And she comes in and plays me that song, and I was like, I don't really care for that too much. And she kind of got sad and got up and left, and she walked over to the Five-Side building where her brother was recording. And about 10 minutes later, the phone rings. And, they said, Jason, you got a call on too, and I pick it up, and it's Steve Earle.
Right.
And he said, are you Jason? I said, yep. He said, you better get on the roof because I'm coming over to throw you right off. I said, why? He said, you don't tell my sister you don't like her song. So I said, I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said I didn't care for it. He's like, I'm coming over to throw you off the roof. So I go in Jewel's office and I said, Jewel, we might have problems. She goes, what's that? I said, Steve Earle's right over there and he's coming over here to throw me off the roof. She goes, why don't you take the rest of the afternoon off? So I go home and he calls me later and he comes over to throw me off the roof and she had to talk him down. Just,
Wow.
He didn't mean it like that, And Stacy and I didn't get along too well after that.
But he did mean it like that.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. He did mean it.
Oh, yeah. No, he was serious.
Oh, God.
That was my misstep.
Characters. I did one where you may not remember this song, but Dolly Parton had a #1 record called Don't Call It Love. And it was written by Tom Snow, who ended up being my first employer.
Tina's dad.
I'll back that again.
Cheek Kiss Dad. So Cheek Kiss Dad hired me to move me to LA. So I had passed on that song. Judy Stakey had played us, me and you both, had played the song Don't Call It Love for both of us 10 times, saying this would be perfect for Ronnie, this would be perfect for Ronnie, it'd be perfect for Ronnie. It wasn't perfect for Ronnie, you know what I mean? It was not the kind of song that Ronnie would have sang, And evidently wasn't very good for Alabama either, because we both heard it a dozen times. And she was real nice, but we just didn't want to cut the song. So Dolly ended up cutting the song, had a big record with it, and it won BMI Song of the Year. It was like 2 years later, though, by then. And at that point, I was working for Tom Snow. So I accepted the Song of the Year award for the song I'd passed on about 6 times.
Yeah.
And but I ended up, just because of timing, I ended up being the guy standing there holding the award for Song of the Year.
So in other words,
I've literally, only awards I've ever gotten were for things I had nothing to do with.
I was going to say, in other words, if you see Brian on TV accepting something, he had nothing
to do with it. Probably wasn't. It's amazing I was even there.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh my God.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Got it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Harold, it's an honor.
See.
Amen.
It's an honor just to be in
what
this
a
room with you
pleasure.
guys.
I appreciate all you guys, your talent, and what you do, and what you did already.
Right back
It's been
at
great,
you.
man.
Yeah, man.
Love it.
Well, you allowed us to do what we
do.
can't do anymore.
Right.
And what I mean by that is it was about the writers and the artists and not about, you know, all the other bull crap. It was like, you know, the old thing Butler used to say, take a hit song and lock it in the drawer for 10 years. You open that drawer, it's still a hit song.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
That's
and then,
true.
you know, and then the whole breakdown of what's a song and what's a record.
Yeah.
You know, because there's some great records that if you just put that song on paper, it may not be much. And then there's
They call it. There's a word for that. It's called Beyonce.
Well, you know, the music, the song is still so important, at least to me, you know.
Yep.
And it will all. Maggie Cavender had it right, you know, all those years.
Another character.
Yeah, man. She coined the phrase, "It all begins with a song."
Yeah, that's right.
And it does. The big stuff, you know, you can't change that. It's either good or it's not so good, and we know the difference, and you guys know the difference, and that's what made it so good, you know. So kudos to all of you, but you know, I love all of you.
Back at
Love
it.
you, buddy. Love you, buddy. And I can't wait to continue to do this.
Yep.
Yes.
This is good.
Because I'm going to think about 100 stories this year.
Yeah, we'll get to the good stuff.
That's right. Just getting warmed up.
man.
That was so good.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Behind the Shed. Behind the Shed podcast was created by Wade Smith, produced by Russ Zavitson and Wade Smith, recorded at Ace Haggerty's podcast house in Nashville, Tennessee. Camera, audio, video, and editing by Zach Day and Jack Youngblood. Music written and composed by Russ Zavitson. Today's guests were Jason Morris, Chuck Bedwell, Brian Rawlings, Russ Zavitson, Wade Smith, and Harold Shedd. You can contact the show via email at behindtheshed@gmail.com or visit us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day and go out and share some stories. Tune in next week as we go Behind the Shed. A video recording of this podcast can be viewed on YouTube at Behind the Shed.